Hi, I'm Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Christy, and we work with Globe International.
Working with missionaries, we hear stories of the struggles, the humor, God's goodness, and a little side of crazy.
Hey, that's who we are.
This is Crazy Missionary Stories. Hello and welcome back to Crazy Missionary Stories. Today we are talking with the Wrights, Ty and Jessica, who have been in ministry for 8 years. So guys, will you start us out by telling us what you're currently doing on the mission field?
Yeah, so currently we're doing business as mission. So we are actually transitioning out of one business and into another one. So that's kind of what we're doing.
So will you guys tell us a little bit about how you both got into missions?
Sure, I can take that one if you want. So it started, let me think, maybe 10 years ago. We had 2 kids at the time, now we have 3. And we were living the American dream, or what we thought was the American dream. And we were young and we had everything. We had a house, we had the cars, we were making good money, but we were empty. We felt like something was really missing. And we were going to church sporadically. We weren't really believers. We were kind of going out of guilt a little bit. But we believed in God. We just weren't really followers, I guess you could say. And then one day, this missionary came to our church, and I listened to him, and something happened in my heart. Like, God just really spoke to me. And at that moment, I just became a believer. And I also felt like I needed to become a missionary. Strange as that may sound, I know that's not the normal way to do things. But I felt like that God was calling us to do something about His Great Commission. So I came home, and naturally I came home and told Ty, I said, hey, guess what? We're supposed to be missionaries. And he said,
This is a problem.
you're crazy.
Yeah,
He said, basically, you're crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he was certainly doing a work in her heart, but he was not doing that same work in mine, you know. And so, I don't know, for months and months and months, Jess just kept bringing this up.
And praying for him.
We're supposed to go, we're supposed to be missionaries, and I'm like, Jess, I don't even really know if I'm a believer or not.
Wow.
Like, I don't know what does that mean for our marriage? Like, I'm literally thinking, like, are we going to get a divorce? Because I don't know, like, if I can do that, you know. And then I think through these months, just kept praying that God would do something in my heart. And finally, He did, but God did a lot of evidences in our lives, like just irrefutable things that I couldn't dispute that were from Him, that finally solidified that call for me. You know? And once He gave me those evidences, I was like, okay, I can't keep arguing this call, and I just gave in.
Yeah, basically, I had lost my job, and we got to a place where we needed to sell our house. And so we got ready to sell our house, and he said, oh, we can't sell, we're not going to be able to sell it. And then we got an offer right away. God just kept answering all of those prayers. And then he goes, well, if we're supposed to be missionaries, what are we going to do with all our stuff? And he looked around at the house. The very next morning, we got an email from the realtor with a list of all the furniture they wanted to buy, because the people were buying it as a parsonage for a church. And so I was like, well, there's the answer to your question. I guess we just sell our stuff because we're going to go to the mission field. And so we sold a lot of our stuff along with the house. And so God just kept answering prayers. When we closed on the house, we got a poem. And along with that, we had Isaiah 40:31 was a verse that God had kept giving us. And so at the end of that poem, Isaiah 40:31 was there at the very bottom of that. It's kind of like just that confirmation, like, this is what I've asked you to do. And so you're doing that, you're on track. And so that kind of was really the start of us doing mission work. And so it was really not, I guess, the normal way to start things, but God really just made a huge move in our hearts and in our lives. So,
Well, for sure, I mean, I know, like, you're not supposed to test the Lord, but I really did. I tested Him a lot, and He used the house, and it was in the middle of the recession. You know, we were supposed to, like, lose $40,000 on our home, and it was really funny that the house never even got put on the market. Our real estate agent was a member of this church, and they needed to buy a parsonage. They looked at the home, and they gave us a full price offer. So it was like an $80,000 swing. We didn't lose $40,000. God gave us $40,000.
Oh my goodness.
And also on top of that, that was $100 over what we needed to pay off all of our debt, all of our school loans and everything. Wow. So it was like one fell swoop God took care of the house. He took care, they bought all kinds of furniture and stuff from us, lawnmowers, generator, like just weird stuff, you know, and it was like everything. And it was like God was like, here, you're free from all of this. You are free to go.
Yeah.
You're free to live into the call that
Yeah.
I've put on your lives. It was really a hard truth and evidence to, like, at that point, like, how do I keep going against the call?
No, you said you even questioned in the beginning, like, I don't even know if I'm a believer. So the Lord, you also came to that place that you surrendered your life to the Lord. Like, was that a dramatic thing, or was it just kind of a gradual?
So I think the reality is that I've always been a believer since I was a little kid. I had a very broken childhood, and I really felt like there were times where, like, how did I live through some of the stuff that I went through as a child, and even into my teenage years. And I don't think that there was a question like, oh, that I didn't believe that God was who he was, but becoming a follower was really the difference for me. It wasn't that I denied that, oh, he created the world, all this stuff. It was just like, I don't know how to give my life to him. And with the house and all of those things, it was like I could finally surrender because I challenged him so many times. And it was like every time I challenged him, he went above and beyond the challenge. Like, not only am I going to answer the challenge, but I'm going to one-up it. And it was just like, okay, I give in.
I give up, yeah. Or not give up, but like give everything to you.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, I'll do it. And it was, for me, it wasn't what somebody said or what was happening in my heart. It was really I'd had a lot of evidences, and they just kept lining up more and more and more and more. And it was finally like, okay, it's too much evidence in my life for me to continue not surrendering.
So you guys originally went out with a different agency or
We
different
went
group.
without an agency.
You went without an agency.
With just our home church.
Wow.
Who didn't necessarily have a lot of experience in sending any missionaries. So we went out solo, in a sense.
Well, I mean, you got to think that neither one of us were believers, really, before we were getting this call to go to the mission field at the same time. And so we really didn't have an idea of what going to the mission field looked like.
No idea.
We didn't know you're supposed to have some training before you do this. Oh, you should have an organization behind you before you go. And just to have that kind of support and stuff, we were just kind of clueless.
So you were just all in.
We had the zeal.
Because God told us to go.
And we really I think the thing in our hearts was we wanted to respond to his call wholeheartedly, like 150% of everything that we could. But we had all this zeal, but it was unbridled. We didn't know what direction to go or how to get where we needed to go.
So where did you go when you went out?
So we went to Honduras, and we had our home church behind us, and someone gave us some wisdom. I believe is our pastor, and they put together like a little, I can't think. We had a group of people who were kind of behind us, and that kind of gave us some advice with our church. And so they were kind of there to help us, and so we had them, and they were amazing. But
they still didn't have any experience.
They
on
didn't
the
have a
field
lot of
or anything
experience,
like
yeah.
that. So
yeah, so we went to Honduras, and we went to work at this orphanage, and I mean, we were there 2 months, but it wasn't the best experience. And so after 2 months, we came back, and we realized it was let's just say it was a really, really tough experience for multiple reasons, not just because we didn't have we had no training. The situation there wasn't great. It was just really, really difficult. And we came back, and I remember us both going, I don't know if we're supposed to be missionaries. I just don't know if this is what we're supposed to be doing. But in fact, I think maybe this is what we're not even supposed to be doing this at all.
Just really questioned.
We really questioned it. And for some reason, one of the people on that board that we had done with the church had suggested us to do perspectives. We had no idea what perspective was. In fact, we had no idea what unreached people groups were. And so we went to this perspectives class, and our world was like completely opened up with missions in general. And that's when we met Danny and Judy Armstrong from Globe International. And
we started sharing with them what had happened, and they're like, oh yeah, we understand.
Yep.
We've had Yeah, and it was like the first time that we met anybody that really had that kind of experience on the field. So that shared experience was automatically like, oh, we have a relationship with these people already, you know. And it was really like Danny and Judy kind of took us under their wings and started helping us along the way and offering more advice and mentoring. And it was like, this is really a natural transition for us. And then that doubt of, did we really hear God about should we be missionaries and go to the missions field? We lost that doubt and started gaining confidence that, yeah, we did hear that correctly. But God is also like saying, hey, you need some things along the way.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things that you need.
Yeah, we kind of had to learn it a little bit the hard way.
So we did everything probably the wrong way.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We learned a lot.
You
along
learned
the
a lot.
way.
So in that, what did you learn that you should have done? That you wish you would have done?
I think really that we just got to step ahead of ourselves, you know, and it wasn't because we just didn't know. We're oblivious to the fact that how important a sending agency is. You know, Globe International has done, not only is Globe like family to us, and that kind of support is so important on the field. And we were just lacking that. We didn't have anybody in our lives that could give us that kind of support, that had the experience, you know, and just the help along the way, even if it can be a big thing or a little thing, but having those kind of people behind you, it's been a huge difference for us.
That's really cool. So you came back from Honduras, you did the Perspectives course, you met Danny and Judy, and then what?
So we actually, when we started learning about unreached people groups, we really felt the call to go to unreached people groups. And as you guys know, there are a lot of unreached people groups in the world. And so we go, okay, God, well, where are we supposed to go then? We don't want to just pick at random. And so we decided to get a really big map, kind of like the one you have behind you. And we had this tiny little apartment that we were living in. We just put this big map on our wall. And we just kind of wrote down how many unreached people groups that were in each country. And we started praying over it for a few months as we were going through Perspectives. And we just spent months and months praying over it. And then one day in church, I was working night shifts as a nurse as we were kind of doing this. And I came in after a night shift and was doing worship. And I feel like God could speak to me a little better. I was so tired. I don't feel like I have so many barriers up. And so I was just sitting there in worship with my eyes closed. And that's when I felt like God told us that we needed to go to a certain people group in China. And so after that, I came home and I told Ty, and I'm like, okay, he's finally told us. And so after that, we knew we needed to go to China. And so
it was pretty cool too. In that time that we spent praying and praying, we also went up to Auburn, Alabama, and did a Medicamp with Curtis Sargent. And it's all about disciple-making movements, church planting movements. It's kind of like the underground church, if like you're working in China. And we had met a couple there that were working in China. And so we came and talked with Danny and Judy and like, hey, we think God's calling us to China, you know. And Danny and Judy are like, well, we really don't have anybody in China, and y'all are really new to the field. You kind of need to be under some leadership there that we would trust. And well, it turns out we knew the couple that we had met at Medicamp, and they were with Crew at the time, and they had a big team doing, you know, disciple-making movements and church planting movements in China. So, and it was in the province that we needed to go to. And so we went to China under an MOU with that team. So it was really God doing a lot of little things along the way, opening doors,
guiding
giving us
us,
relationships with folks that we needed to have along the way.
And guiding us to exactly like what we needed to be doing.
And you're going through the training, and so you went to the Medicamp. You mentioned that you were with Global Frontier Missions for a time and did that training. Was that also in that season, or when did that happen?
So that happened that happened afterwards as we were preparing to go to China. The Globe had mentioned we should go to Global Frontier Missions training in Clarkston, Georgia.
I think it was more like Globe said, will you be the guinea pigs for going to GFM
and we
doing their missionary training school and seeing how that works, and
we
we
said,
were
sure.
like, yeah, that sounds good. And
we knew we needed training. At this point, we had been to Honduras. We're like, sign us up because we have been there and done it, and we know we need the training.
Yeah,
so,
and so
we're happy to do it.
We use that now. We have all of our brand new missionaries go through their training. How was that for you? What did you get out of that?
Oh, it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was a game changer for us. I think because we have 3 daughters, and life is life. It's busy, and at that point in time, our daughters were
1, 3, and 5.
And so we were both going through, and the missionary training school is like a 6-month intensive program that gives you a 2-year degree. And so those 2 years they're packed into those 6 months, but it's not just classroom setting, it's also outside ministry experience. And if you don't know about Clarkston, Georgia, they call that the most diverse square mile in America. There's refugees from all over the world there. So there's all kinds of unengaged, unreached people groups and unreached people groups there. And so it was really this time where you got to go and learn just a ton of stuff, but you start gaining these tools, but then you get the opportunity to go out in the community and use those tools. And so it was a lot of hands-on experience, and then starting to learn that dynamic of our family and like how can we live a life of ministry, take care of our family, be mother, father, and what we need to be to the folks in the community at the same time. And so for us, it was really impactful, and it gave us another bit of courage, like we can do this. We can.
And another aspect of it is how do we allow the kids to be a part of the ministry? Because that's always been really a big point for us. We don't want it to be just us two doing ministry. We want the kids to be a part of it too. We want them to feel at home in wherever God has us. And so that was really cool for us because a lot of times they were the key to an open door for us because the kids, I would take them out to the playground. And when they were out, then we were able to let them play with other kids. And that would be an open door to get invited into an apartment and have tea with other people groups. And so that was really huge. And the kids loved it. Our middle daughter, her nickname is Lulu. And that was from some people that were from Turkey. They gave her that nickname because we spent so much time with them. And they remember that. And so it was a really special time that we had there. And we've used so much of that training that we had there has been incredible for us because we've used it on the field so many times and so many hard times that we've had on the field in China and in Thailand. So it was huge.
So going to China, how did all of that go? You have 3 young daughters and, the U.S., China, they're very different. How did all of that go?
It was hard. So when we moved to China, it was our first time there. So we packed up our 8 suitcases and we moved. Our daughters were still 1, 3, and 5. Wow. It was a huge transition, to say the least. And it was hard. China's a really tough place. It is very spiritually dark. It is really difficult to be a Christian, to be a missionary there. You can't even say the word missionary. We have to have code words for everything.
It's beyond difficult. It's really, it's like going to prison, I would say. You live this life of freedom here in America and you're open about what's God done in your life, and all of that is suppressed. It's like living under this wet blanket all the time. Your movement is restricted, your speech is restricted, your thinking is restricted, your freedom is basically gone. It's a whole new ball game, and it's really hard to adjust to that. Even if you weren't a Christian living in China, it's hard enough, but then going there with this attempt to do ministry, it's really tough.
Yeah, it's for example, you get watched everywhere. As soon as you walk out of your apartment into corridor, there's cameras on you, so they know where you're going at all times. They know what you have, what you're carrying. They know, when you're meeting for church, you have to stagger going into church. They just know what you're doing constantly.
You're
they have
constantly planning out the route that you can take to church. That, this group of people will go that way and we'll go this way. They'll go 15 minutes before us. And even like the electric motorcycle scooters are a big thing there. There's just as many of those as there are cars. So that was like our main mode of transportation, but it's mandatory that you go and let the police put a GPS tracker on it. And they say that's for theft reasons so that they can basically retrieve it if it's stolen. But the reality is it's that big brother knowing where you are at all times, and they have facial recognition cameras and then the gait recognition. So it's, even if you covered like COVID, you wear a mask, but then they can recognize how you walk. So it's really,
they're always listening. You can't really have a conversation outside without them listening.
I mean, one night we were about to sit down for dinner and we got a knock at the door, which is, you never get a knock at the door. We lived on like the 14th story. And you always get a call up from downstairs in the parking garage. So to get a knock on the door was really weird. And then I looked out the peephole, and there's like a dozen cops outside the door. And it's like, I look at Jess, I'm like, what do I do? You open the door, and they just come in, and they're taking pictures of all your stuff. They're going through your things. And it's like the freedom that we have in America, we take so much for granted, because the Chinese people, they don't get that freedom.
Yeah. How long had you been there before that incident happened?
We've
Maybe
been there about a year or so, yeah. We had protocol for it for our team. Like, I had to go into the bedroom with our phones and delete through, like, because we have a certain app that we message through that's encrypted, so I had to delete all of that. Like, I sent out a message to our team, hey, the cops are here. So, because it's possible that they could take me and him, and they could leave our kids there by themselves. Yeah. And so I had to send a message so somebody could come get the kids in case they did do that.
You were prepared for all of that. You knew that could be
protocol.
Wow.
And so that they knew, just in case the cops went to them. So we sent out a message, deleted all of that, because they will go through our phones. They didn't happen to go through our phones in that particular visit, but it's happened before. And so we did all of that, turned our phones off, and then I came back out so it's not suspicious. They took pictures of everything, went through our passports. Of course, it scared the kids like crazy. They were, it scared all of us, of course. Yeah, I mean, I'm not immune to that, but I mean, they were there a good hour or so.
How many were there, do you think?
So there was about 12 of them in the beginning when they first came into the house, and then I think we ended up with 4 of them for about 45 minutes, just, going through stuff in the house, taking pictures.
Do you know why it happened?
We never really knew why they came.
I think it's because they can.
Yeah. I mean, they always know, because like anytime you go anywhere, we have to register with the police. Even if you go one night for a hotel, you come back, you have to register with the police again. So they know exactly how many foreigners there are and where they live, and there's not that many foreigners that live in our city. And so sometimes it's just a matter of like, oh, we're going to check in on the foreigners and scare them, make sure they're in check. It could be something we said, that they were watching. We don't really know. But they didn't do it to anybody else that night. Sometimes they will go through the apartments and do it to everybody. So that particular night, it was just us.
Yeah, we sent the warning message out to our whole team, like, cops are here. Just be prepared. Get your stuff in order. And
they stopped, and everybody was praying and everything. So thankfully, they didn't take us in for questioning. They've done it before. They've taken people in, parents in, and kept them overnight for questioning. But thankfully, that was not.
How long did you guys live there?
We were there right at 2 years. Yeah, China was hard for us. Also, while we were there, my mother passed away. So that was...
Suddenly,
yeah.
We were there about 3 months. 3 months in, we were...
When that happened?
Yeah, we got a call.
Goodness.
Right.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was tough. China was really tough.
Wow. Yeah, we were there, let me think, about 8 months in. I had to have surgery, like gallbladder surgery, so we came back to America for that and then went back. There's just a lot of stuff that happened when we were over there. So it It was a wild ride in China for sure.
I'm sure you were told kind of about like the lack of freedom and all of that, but was it still super shocking when you got there? Were you prepared for that amount of craziness?
Words cannot explain the feeling.
Yeah.
It's just the reality of the situation is that I could try to explain it to you all day long, but until you experience it, we just don't have the vocabulary to say it in words. It's really something that you have to experience to know that kind of suppression. And it still, to this day, breaks my heart for the Chinese people.
And the Chinese believers, too.
I mean, and we were there in a period where Xi Jinping was just coming into his presidency and things were changing, and the Chinese people were really fearful that it was going to regress instead of, make progress. And I think it has regressed. And it wasn't like we were there during the one-child policy and all of that stuff, but it's still, like, your heart just breaks for them after you're there. And China's really funny. Like, they do have, like, sometimes you're going in the city and, like, oh, there's a church. Like, am I seeing that correctly? Well, you are. You're seeing that it's a church, but then you look and, like, Xi Jinping's picture is above Jesus's picture. And it's just like, man, this place it's crazy.
It's just very controlled.
And it's
like allowed, but it's very controlled about what is said and what is not said, and you can imagine what's
they're
preached.
known for folks who do go to church. They change the Bible. They add to, they take away. They're not getting it's wild. And your heart just continually breaks for them because like, if they don't ever leave China, they'll never experience freedom. Never.
Did you guys speak any of the language at all?
Yeah, that was a big thing that we are still adamant about, and I think that we really learned in missionary training school is that it's very important to learn the language. So we spent our whole time in China learning Mandarin and trying our best to really learn the culture as well. I mean, the culture, our culture and their culture, we're worlds apart. So, and just because you can speak in Mandarin doesn't mean that you can come to an understanding in a conversation because of the cultural differences. And so it's always been our goal as we're on the field, wherever we are, to attempt to learn the language to the best of our ability and also learn the culture right alongside that.
I want to hear about how you guys got to Thailand, but before we do that, you guys mentioned that you had some funny, crazy stories from your time in China. Would you like to share some of those?
Sure. So it wasn't all dark. So there are some hilarious things that happened. Danny and Judy know a lot of our mishaps that happened. So one particular that we do love to tell because it's quite hilarious, and it involves both of us. So one night, so we have this door. They have like these weird doors for apartments, and so like you get really nervous about people coming in because we talked about the cops and stuff, and so like the only way to like really bolt the door is to like take the key and then you can like from the inside and put it in and then bolt it from the inside. And so, but what I didn't know was that if you do that, you cannot unlock it from the outside with a key. And so, who knew? So we lived on the top floor, and so on the top floor we had a rooftop, and there was like this little haphazardly built room that we would do homeschool in. And so we also had like a little laundry room up there, and we had some clothes up there we'd hung up and had the window open. And so one night about 3 a.m. it was like storming, and I woke up and I thought, oh no, our clothes are gonna get wet. I need to go up there and close the window. So I got up and I took my key with me, and that key was in the inside door. So I go upstairs with my key, and I'm like, oh, no problem, because I have a key. I'm going to be able to get back in. I closed the window, came back down, and, I barely have any pajamas on. And I come back down. This is like a communal hallway, and it goes up to the rooftop. So I come back down, and I put my key in, and it doesn't open. And I'm like, oh, crap. I just locked myself out, and it is 3 a.m. And mind you, in our little haphazardly built room upstairs, there lives these big cockroaches that come out at night. Oh, no. And I do not like cockroaches at all. So I'm like, oh no, I refuse to sleep with the cockroaches. So I will do.
Because you were thinking maybe I'll just sleep up here.
Yeah, that was my thought. And I was like, I refuse to do that. I am not staying up here. I'm going back to my bed. Yeah. So on that rooftop, there's these like little sections that jut out that are like these little window jut things. So I'm like, well, if I just get on that, found this like long piece of bamboo.
What Jess is not really saying is that she's going over the parapet wall of the side of the apartment building, and she's on the 14th story, the roof of this apartment building, and she's going on the side of the building, and there's this piece of concrete that's as big as this table, and she's out there on that.
On the ledge.
With my long piece of bamboo that I found on the roof.
Tapping on the window trying to get somebody.
So I got him up, and I'm tapping on the window.
You're not afraid of heights, apparently.
No, not really. I was determined I was not sleeping with the roaches, okay?
You're more scared of roaches than heights in the 14th floor.
Than falling to your death from the 14th story.
So I tap on the window, and then it wakes up. I can hear him, and he wakes up. And I was like, oh, crap, I should have left a message at the door so he doesn't do the same thing as me.
So I do the exact same thing.
No.
Yes. So now I'm like upstairs and she's climbing over the wall and I'm like, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind? You know how dangerous this is? You didn't let the door close, did you? And I'm like, well, yeah. And she goes, we're locked out. So our kids are really small at this point in time, and they're all sharing one bedroom, one tiny bedroom.
They're like 2, 4, and 6.
It's on the back side of the building.
I was like, no problem. I will knock on their window.
So now, and we're both over there knocking on their window. And
they're not waking
now
up.
Neighbors are waking up. Like, they're saying stuff that we don't know what they're saying.
Because we'd not been there very long, maybe 2 months or something like this. And he's in his underwear, so the lady brings him some clothes.
So, yeah, at this point in time, we've woken up the neighbors, and I go back down to try to.
We're knocking on the door.
And the neighbor comes out, and I'm like, she just looks at me like, do you want some clothes?
She comes back out with something and puts it on him.
So then we never get the girls to wake up.
No.
Never.
No, they
And normally they wake up early in the morning. So at this point, I told Jess, I'm like.
And we have class the next morning too, early.
We have language class. So I tell Jess, I'm like, well, there's no point in both of us not getting some sleep. You go up to the cockroach room and sleep in there, and I'll just take a cushion off the chair and I'll sleep right by the door in the hallway.
In case the
girls come out, and our girls slept in so late that morning. And I'm just like,
the communal hallway?
Yes,
the communal hallway right in front of the door.
Oh my goodness.
So
right by the elevator.
The shame
stairs.
of being in your underwear in China, that's what I got to bear. I'm sure our neighbors were like, these white people are crazy. Crazy. Like, what moved in next door from us?
No. They finally woke up and they opened the door like, what are you doing? Like, y'all weren't worried we weren't in the house?
No.
Huh, we didn't even think to check.
Eating breakfast. And
That is so funny. Oh my goodness.
Yes, they did. They weren't even caring if we were there or not. Yep.
Yeah. Another time I was going to meet a guy. Well, he wasn't specifically on our team, but he was actually the doctor of the international hospital in the city where we were. And I played basketball with him a lot. And so I was on my electric scooter. We called them like ninja scooters because they were silent. And if they didn't honk the horn, you would never know they were behind you. So I always felt like I was going to get ran over if I was walking on the sidewalk. Anyways, and in China, it's okay to drive these on the sidewalk. Everybody does it. It's like, it's just another pathway, another little road. So I'm on the sidewalk driving to the gym, and I get close to where I'm going to park, and I see this guy standing at this big tree, and I don't even think about it. I just kind of whip in and park, and then I hear this noise, and I'm like, is that running water? No, this guy is peeing on the tree. And I'm like, it's like 4:30 in the evening, like, it's still bright outside. Everybody can see you. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, I've not seen this before. But, okay, full-grown man peeing in the middle of the day. Okay. So I proceed to get off, and then he he approaches me and he starts talking to me in Mandarin. And I realize that he's very drunk. I can smell the alcohol on him. And so I just try to pretend like I don't speak any Mandarin. And I'm like, I don't want any part of this. He's obviously obliterated. I just want to go play basketball. And he's very drunk. He's wobbling. He's grabbing onto me. And I'm like, okay, bye, And he keeps grabbing me. And I'm trying to be very gentle about, like, I'm already uncomfortable and trying to get away from him. And I was like, okay, bye. And I start walking off. And next thing I know, he's on my scooter. And then he drops it on the ground. And I'm like, I have to turn around and pick my scooter up. So I go over there and I pick it up. And now he's telling me that I'm going to take him somewhere, that I'm going to be like his ride. And I'm finally like, no, I'm not. And at this point, I'm speaking a little Mandarin. I'm like, no, you need to call a taxi or whatever. Like, I'm staying here. And so he's beginning to get more and more aggressive. And I've got the scooter back up. And next thing I know, he just grabs me by the arm, very, like, strong. And my first reaction is, like, I want to hit the guy. And I know that's not the Christian response, but at this point in time, I'm like, I don't know what else to do. And then in my head, I'm like, I am in China. I'm a foreigner here. It will be my fault, and I will be in Chinese prison no matter what. And so now I'm just like, God, what do I do? What do I do about the situation that I'm in? And he's got a hold of my arm and just going on and on and on. And I'm trying to tell him, like, I'm going to play basketball. And as I'm finally, like, taking a breath, and I'm like, please, Lord, help me. And then these sirens happen right behind us. Like, I don't know if it was an ambulance or if it was a police, but at that time, he lets me go and he looks. And I just take off on my scooter and park at another place. And I'm like, this is China for me. I'm like, the scooter's not even worth that much, but the jail time behind this whole...
It would be.
Yeah.
You guys stay in China for two years. How did that transition go from, deciding to leave China? How did you decide to then transition to Thailand?
So we actually left China because I was having a lot of health issues, a lot of stomach issues and problems. And so we came back to America to try to take care of some of those things with the intention of going back. And as we were back, we really kind of felt like this back and forth about, do we go back, do we not? And we started praying about it for a few months and then felt the need to stay here. And we went to work in Auburn to help prepare another team to go back to China. And so that was kind of our transition back to America for a little while. I don't remember exactly how long that was. We stayed in America right at 2 years before we went to Thailand. So then we started preparing to go back to China, and COVID hit. And we knew that at that point, like, getting back to China was near impossible. It was completely closed at that point. And so we were going to go back with a couple of other people that we had been in China with before. And so we all decided, like, hey, why don't we go to Thailand? That's where a lot of people are going right now, and just as a preparation to get back into China whenever it opens. And so we said, okay, sure, that sounds great. And as we were kind of doing that and praying through all of that, we both felt like the Lord was saying, if you're going to be in Thailand, then I want you to minister to the Thai people. And so that's exactly what we felt like the Lord was calling us to do. And we said, okay, God, that's what we will do.
Well, I think the history of Thailand is that Thailand has a lot of missionaries there. It's not uncommon to be in the city and meet another missionary. But there's not a lot of missionaries there working with Thai people. Normally, missionaries use Thailand as a platform or a launching base to reach other countries, other people groups. And so there's not really, like, a lot of focus on the Thai people. And so
I don't know the exact numbers, but there's just a lot of closed countries around Thailand, and Thailand is open. And so it's an easy place to be.
Yeah, it's like an access hub. And so I think what God was doing was telling us, like, you're not going to do that same thing. If you're going to Thailand, I might get you back to China, I might not, but while you're there, you need to start focusing on trying to reach some Thai people. And so that's really where it kind of solidified for us, like, okay, we don't know if China will ever happen again for us or not. And I think God has done a really good job in our hearts of being okay with letting China go and really focusing on Thai people.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of an easy transition in our hearts to just say, okay, we'll go to Thailand and focus on learning the language and doing all that stuff it takes to reach Thai people.
And there's a huge need in Thailand too. Like Thailand has like less than 2% of Christian people. They're very Buddhist, and then when we say Buddhist, it really is like a mix of Buddhism, Hinduism, animism. It's like their own type of Buddhism, and it's very spiritually dark. I mean, you've been to Thailand, you've seen, like, there's just spirit houses everywhere, there's statues everywhere. When you build something, they clear the land. The first thing that they do is they go and bless the land with a monk, and they put a statue there. That is the very first thing that they do.
Invite a spirit to come and protect the land. It's like immediate.
And we're still learning, like, we're in year 4 of our Thai language, and we're still learning about their religion. And, like, there is so deep and so ingrained. Like, to be Thai is to be Buddhist. And it's very ingrained in their culture. And so there is a very big need for Thai people. And so when we felt like God was calling us, he really put that in our hearts. And so, yeah, that's kind of where it took us a little while once COVID hit to actually get to Thailand. So we ended up there February 2021. And so we had to go through 16-day quarantine in the hotel because Thailand was incredibly strict. So when I say quarantine, it meant we could not leave the hotel at all. We got 2 times we got to go to the rooftop for 30 minutes in Bangkok. Yeah. And it really wasn't a reprieve because it was incredibly hot on the roof. But so we were stuck in there. So we did a lot of homeschool. We'd watched a lot of movies, got over our jet lag. And then we moved on to the city that we serve in, which is Chiang Mai.
Once you got to Thailand and you were able to, get over the quarantine and all that, what type of ministry were you guys doing?
So we started continuing doing the work of disciple-making movements, church-planting movements. Some of the folks that we were on the team with in China, they had also had to leave the country. China, basically, the government came in and kicked out a lot of foreigners, whether you're a Christian or not, whether they knew that you were doing Christian work. They just got rid of a lot of them. And so we ended up, there's a Chinese family that had moved to Chiang Mai. And they moved for other reasons, that they were starting to be well known in the Chinese community and also on the Chinese government radar. And so they moved for safety reasons to Chiang Mai. And then another group of people that were there. So we just decided, well, we'll go there and continue. We'll team up with them and keep doing that. And so for about the first year and a half, we did do that. And with our heart wanting to be focused on the Thai people, we ended up doing a lot of work with, like, Burmese people. The Burmese church is very strong, and there's a lot of refugees that have came out of Myanmar, and there's a lot of Karen and Kachin. There's just a lot of different ethnic groups there, and their church is really strong, and they do the same kind of underground house church type thing. And so it was really easy to start working with them. And one of the families did start working with them very in depth, and they're still doing a great work with the Burmese people. And then the other Chinese family, they're really still a huge part of the Chinese church. And they are they have so much, he's just swamped with work all the time for the Chinese. And so it's kind of like we naturally kind of went our own ways. And so we started thinking, like, what do we do? They're working with Burmese people, they're working with Chinese people, we want to focus on Thais. And so we kind of went in and started, like, business as mission. And that really helps with a lot of things. It helps to have natural relationships with Thai people. We're there on student visas, and when a Thai person asks you, well, what do you do here? I'm a student. They look at us, well, you're older, you have kids, like
Like,
why
it's
are you a
weird.
student? Isn't it
Yeah.
a little late to be a student? So just to have the identity in Thailand that, oh, well, we're a business owner. Well, that makes a lot more sense to them, and it creates natural relationships for us. And so we, Jess and the girls really, they started horse riding. And the place that they were going to do horse riding is a Thai couple that owned it. And basically, you can take that over because you know that story a little better than I do.
So, yeah, basically we became like really good friends with them. And so when we first landed in Thailand, one of the things we started praying for, and even before we made it to Thailand, is for Thai friends. And so we've heard it was really difficult to make friends with Thai people. And so it was like such an answered prayer. We're like, yes, we've made these Thai friends, and we started spending a lot of time there. We loved it. And they became like our family, family to me, family to the girls. And so as we kind of were praying through business as mission, and it kind of all just, God just kind of opened the door to starting a farm. And so we thought, wow, this is perfect. We can do a farm. They were needing to move their horse riding. When I say horse riding, you think of like a stable in America. Okay, take that all away, because that's not what it is there. Okay, just think of like very basic, probably like what you'd see like 100 years ago in America. Like, you think of like very basic little stables and little posts for like a round pen. I mean, like that's what it is. And then they rent land and you pull it up and you move it. So that's what you're looking at. And so they had to move the place to a different place because their lease was coming up on the land. And so like God just kind of moved it all, and we prayed through it like a tremendous amount and thought, okay, this is something that we can do. We really have to have a Thai business partner for multiple reasons. Owning a business in Thailand is not a simple thing. They make it incredibly difficult for a foreigner. It's very legally difficult. So having a Thai business partner is really like the only way you can do it. So we decided that's what we were going to do. So we decided to open up a farm with them. We found a most beautiful piece of land outside of the city that we were in this small little community. So we were all moving out there and felt like, yes, this is like God's answered prayers. Like we can really use these people in the community to help work here for us, and just really felt like, okay, this is it. Like we can try to have this business as mission and really be a light to this whole community here.
So we were going to join them. They were going to continue doing horse riding, and it's all in the mountains, so it's a lot of trail riding and stuff like that, which it's really popular in Thailand. It's super fun. And then we were going to use the same piece of land. It would have some stables, and then we were going to do camping. So like maybe glamping, if you want to think of it like that. And so we really just went all in. We felt like this is what God was leading us into, and we just wanted to be obedient to that. And we rented this. It was like 30 rai, which is about 10 acres, and it had basically been untouched for years and years and years. And so we went in and cleared it, and it had incredible views, and there was no electricity, no water, nothing out there. And so we started, developing land, putting stables out there. It took us a long time to get electricity, so on and so forth. And
water, yeah.
So we're, in this process with them, and it suddenly just seems to take a turn in our relationship with them. Like
we forget we moved out there without the
electricity.
electricity.
We moved out there.
So we got these little tiny houses out there. And so we got like 2 tiny houses for us and the girls, and then there's 1 tiny house for them. And they're about 3 meters apart. I have no idea how many feet that is. I switched over to meters, and now I can't do feet anymore.
9 or 10 feet.
So anyway, we do that, and we moved over there in March of 2023, and they told us, the electricity company, which you can imagine doing things like that in America is difficult, well, times 10 in Thailand, because it's all like a lot of under the table stuff, and we didn't want to do it that way and stuff. So they're like, okay, electricity will be done in a week. Okay, well, we didn't get it till 2 months later. And so that's like the start of the hottest season in Thailand is April. And so it became really hot really fast. So we have no electricity, no fans, no nothing. So let's just say tensions can get higher, you know. But anyways, so it was difficult. We have no kitchen at that point because we were going to build an outdoor kitchen. So we were in the process of that, but having no electricity is difficult. So at that point, we had a little makeshift kitchen in one of the stables. So we popped up a little plastic table, and did like a little gas stove. It was like camping. We had no fridge, of course. So we had this big ice box that was our fridge. So just to so you can imagine what it was like over there.
Unfortunately, the relationship deteriorated, and they started treating our daughters really poorly and just a lot of other things. And sadly enough, it got to the place where it was either us have like a really big argument or, you know, something else had to give. And so
we felt like we needed to give them some space. So we felt like, okay, well, we'll move back to the city so you guys can, I think maybe part of it was that we were there. I don't know. And so we were like, we'll move back to the city and we can continue in partnership and continue doing everything. But I guess that might have been the mistake. Maybe that's what they wanted. So we moved back into the city. And at that point, they ghosted us in a sense. And we kept trying to get in touch with them and all that. But 3 weeks after we moved back into the city, it was like we unpacked it was a Friday, unpacked the last box. We had a movie and had some popcorn that night to kind of celebrate. And at 3 a.m. that night, I woke up because I smelled fire, or smelled smoke. And I kind of almost went back to sleep, and I felt like something was pulling me to say, wake up. So I got up, and we had like a 2-story house. So I went out into the landing, and I flipped on the light to try to figure out like what it was or whatever, and I still couldn't see. It was like still like pitch black. And I looked up into the ceiling, and I could see that the light like was barely on, and then but it wasn't like there was no light coming down, and I couldn't figure out why. And that like I finally woke up enough to figure out that there was that much black smoke in the hallway that's why there was no light. And that's when I realized like our house was on fire. And so I ran to grit him, and I'm like yelling at him like, our house is on fire. And so he gets up and runs. I won't run you through the whole thing because we don't have smoke alarms, and we never thought about it in Thailand. It's just not a requirement over there. We get the kids, and we had quite the time trying to find our way out of the house. You don't think about that, but it took us a while to get out of the house, and took a while for the firefighters to show up. No ambulance comes. About 2 hours later, we're both like, I think we need to go to the hospital. And I'm a nurse by trade. Yeah. And he's like, why do we need to go to the hospital? I'm like, we had so much carbon monoxide poisoning, like we weren't thinking, right? And I was like, I'm not really sure why we need to go to the hospital. I was like, but where else are we going to go? Like, I was like, at this point, it's 5. I'm like, it's 5 in the morning. I was like, I just know that I'm pretty sure we need to go. So we drive ourselves 30 minutes to the hospital with all of that, with the carbon monoxide. And surely enough, we did. Our daughters were in the ICU for 2 nights with carbon monoxide poisoning. It was quite traumatic, to say the least.
I ended up with stitches out of that.
Yes.
Apparently, when Jess woke me up, I took off at a dead sprint to go get the girls, but I ran into something and I fell and hit the floor. I still don't know what it was. I think it might have been like the door frame.
Yeah, it was the door frame. Because I remember thinking, like, really? You're falling on the floor? We're supposed to be getting the girls. Like, hurry up, you know? That was, like, my thought process. Like,
so
it wasn't very nice, right?
I had this pretty good gash on my shin, and I got to the hospital, and the nurse was like, you want me to look at that? I was like, I think it's fine. I think it's just a cut. She looked at it, and she goes, you need stitches pretty bad. And so it turns out that I had,
16 stitches.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
like
so high.
Yes.
like 10 stitches inside of how, because it was so deep. And then, so it was, I think, personally, I mean, I know that God saved our family that night. We should have not woken up that night. We should all went home to be with him. But, you know, that's who he is, and that's what he does. And I don't know why sometimes he decided to save us from that, but, you know, so that talking about, like, what are we doing in Thailand? We're kind of in that place where we're transitioning away from that business, and now the goal is to do another business that we can use as a platform for ministry. And so...
even though it sounds scary because of what happened already, you know, it took us a little while to kind of go through the feelings and the processes of, like, all of this happened, and do we have the courage to do that again? Like, or should we do something else for ministry? You know, I mean, that was last year. It took us a while to kind of process through all those things and process forgiveness too. Even after the fire, we had the landlord, who was Ty, who tried to sue us. She kept threatening that she was going to sue us. She didn't have home insurance.
Well, first and foremost, after 2 days in the hospital, I went back to the house to try to, well, she texted us the whole time we were in the hospital, and I'm trying to tell her, like, look, our girls have carbon monoxide poisoning. It's very dangerous. Like,
she wanted us to come back to unlock the house or give her the key so she can go back in the house.
So when I got to the house, she had actually changed the locks. And so all of our stuff is in that house, and then I show up, and I'm like, I can't get in. So I go knock on the door, and she comes and unlocks the locks, and yeah, at that point, she's basically trying to blame us. So, and it was basically what happened. A stand-up fan had the motor caught fire, and that's what started the fire in the house. Well, it was her fan in the beginning. It wasn't even a fan that we purchased. And so she wanted us to be her insurance and pay for everything. So she wanted to keep the deposit plus us continue to pay everything as she went along fixing it. And I just told her we're not doing that. And then one day I get a phone call from the big police station in the city. It's a police chief calling me, telling me that we have to come in. So I went in and we did our report, and then he called both them and us in, and we basically had to negotiate. Well, the negotiation happened like this: either you pay this money or you go to jail for 15 years.
Because we're going to write it up as it was your fault, your negligence, because you didn't, like, stand there and watch the fan and monitor the fan while it was
So just in case
on.
you need to know, instructions for using a stand-up fan is you turn it on, you sit down, you watch the fan. And when you get up and leave, then, so don't go to sleep with the fan on. That's what the police chief told me. So it was basically, yeah, I mean, we needed to process forgiveness for, you know, the landlord there and our business partners, and really had to ask God, like, help us to understand, like, it's a few Thai people doing this to us. It's not all Thai people, you know, and help us to learn to forgive them so that we don't have cold hearts towards all the other people He's called us to be with and work with.
And that took some time. It was not an overnight process. So, you know.
And then I imagine just the reality of having to go through the trauma of you just went through a house fire where you barely escaped with your lives, and your children were in intensive care for a few days, and that's a lot. It's a lot to process on top of everything else.
The aftermath of that too was, you know, the trauma was so big. Our girls, none of them, they were scared to go to sleep. And that lasted for months, you know, and like if it rained, they're popping up, running through the house at dead sprints at all hours of the night, just panic, you know. And so it took us a while just to get back to normal as a family and try to get us to where we're like mentally healthy again.
Well, I remember we definitely got emails, you know, about what had happened, and everybody was praying for you guys, and it was definitely a big concern for us because our family is over there, you know, and we want to know you guys are okay. How was that? You guys are in a totally different place from when you first went out in missions then. I mean, my goodness. Even when you went to China, the training, it sounds like you just went through a lot of training beforehand. And so what was that, how has that been walking through this tough experience on multiple levels with an organization now? I
mean, it's just, you guys are family, and that's just the way it is. But it's just hard.
Yeah.
I mean, life can be hard like that sometimes, and no one is exempt from that. Hard things happen to us all. And to live through something like that, it's just difficult. As a father, that's the last thing, as a mom, that's the last thing you want to think about is our daughters were in so much danger. And it was completely out of our control. There's nothing I could do as a father to protect them from that. Yeah. And that is scary. It's really scary. And you guys can provide all the support in the world. Yeah. But the reality of it is you're in a country that's not your own. Mm-hmm. You don't know how to do everything there. And you realize, like, I'm helpless in a sense. And Globe did more than we could have ever expected to help out with everything. And not just Globe, many of our supporters here,
Our
churches
home church,
here.
yep.
I mean, it was like
Even churches there.
We had everything, the resources we need to put our life back together in no time. Yep. But it was the other things that the trauma, the mental aspect of it that took a long time for healing to happen. And so...
But we had so much encouragement and love to help, like, guide us along the way and just keep encouraging us along the way, like, hey, you're still doing good. And, that was really helpful, to know that along that journey and along that process, like, it's okay to take the time to keep getting better and to do that. Because, like, there's times when, we would be along that process and we were feeling guilty, like, we should be doing more in ministry, but we still are broken. Like, we've been through a lot, and we still feel like we are on the ground. And we had people from Globe just encouraging us, saying, hey, get better. That is important. And so we did. That's what we did. And so I think that was really important to have that encouragement, because if it was just us two, then, I don't know where we would be. Yeah. And so I think that was super important to have.
I think if it was just us two, we would have pushed through.
And been in a really unhealthy place.
With the kids, it made us really understand, like, we have to give them time to heal. And then that brought recognition into our own lives. Yeah. Like, I need time to heal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sounds like you have a lot of community around you, that not just Globe, but like you said, your churches, your supporters, your team, and then even people there in Thailand that are part of your lives, part of your community, that have been a big help to you and a support.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important, is to not be isolated. I think even if you are, like, physically isolated in a place that you're working, like, to still not be isolated. I think that's super important. And we've learned that we've been part of teams, not a part of teams, physically isolated when we were on the farm. We've been through it all, and I think that's been really important, is always having that support around you.
Well, we're wrapping up on our time here. Thank you guys so much for sharing your stories. I want to give y'all an opportunity, if you want to shout out a website, or I'll link to your member page in the show notes on Globe's website. But is there anything you guys want to say before we wrap up here?
I think that if you're interested in missions, I think you should totally go for it. You've heard a lot of hard stuff that we've been through, but I do not regret any of it. I think that the biggest thing for us is, even though it's been really hard, I think that the best thing of it is that we've drawn even closer to the Lord. And I think that is the biggest thing. Like, God's done such a work in us, and that He's continuing to do a work in us. And so I do not regret it for any second. I would not redo it at all, despite what we've been through. And so don't hear all the hard stuff and think, like, maybe not, like, hear it as, like, that is what I want to do, because I want to follow what the Lord is asking, if God is asking you to do missions.
Yeah. I think the biggest regret would be not stepping out and trying to live into His calling for your life.
Yeah.
I think that, like, we've been through some hard stuff, but I know more than anything, the regret that I would have about not doing this would weigh on me so much more than having to go through some difficult things.
Yeah. So you guys have no regrets? You feel like, no, we're just going to stay here. We're continuing on. Are you going to be doing the same business as mission stuff, or you're changing
Yeah, we're going to change. We're going to open a martial arts gym with another owner there. We'll open another branch. And so we'll offer Muay Thai, MMA, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Muay Thai is really big in Thailand, and it's just such a big part of their culture. So it's a really great way to reach out to, like, especially like young Thais and the younger generation. So we feel like it's a really good way to get to know the people and really have a great way to get into the community.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Well, we've already seen it happening.
Yeah, we've already been doing it.
Yeah, we've been doing it already. So we've been training as a family at a gym for a while now, and had the opportunity not just to minister to Thai people, but people from Spain, America,
Iraq,
England, Australia,
Malaysia.
Iraq, Iran. Yeah, and
That's neat.
yeah, so
That's really neat. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. It's really neat to hear your story. I didn't know all the backstory as well. And of course, we heard about the fire, and then to hear just the testimony of what the Lord has done, and just your process of just the difficult things, and that you didn't cut and run. You guys know that you're called, and you're staying put, and you're transitioning yet again to a new ministry even there. But it sounds exciting that you're all involved as a family, and just thank you for sharing all of that with us, and the things you learned through Global Frontier Missions. I think it's all valuable, and thank you. It's been a blessing to hear your story. Thanks for being willing to share it with us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
It's been a wild ride, but we're looking forward to what God will do next.
Thank you guys so much for listening to Crazy Missionary Stories. If you are listening on Spotify, don't forget to follow us and give us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, and of course, share it with your friends. Thank you guys for listening. See you next time.